All right. Now, in the last session, we actually saw what is configuration management, and in that, we saw what is the architecture of Ansible as a tool in configuration management. Why exactly we will be using this Ansible for configuration management is what we tried to understand. So now, to continue, let us go ahead with the installation. And after the installation, we'll try to set up Ansible to cover one or two machines. And from that, we'll get the practice and we'll start working with Ansible on getting hands-on from there. Okay. So the first thing what you have to do is install Ansible. Now, here, as I said, pretty much in the organization, you will be using CentOS machine. So because of that, I'll be using CentOS machine for all the practices. So specific to this, I'll be using a packaging manager called Yum. The same thing is if you have any other operating system, try to use some packaging manager like apt-get or Yum, depending on what platform that you're trying to install. Okay, so in that, first, what we will do is we'll try to make sure that whatever is the operating system's libraries which are needed are up to date first. Okay, so for that, first we'll try to run this command. And again, whenever you're installing something on a Linux machine, make sure that you are running it as a root account, or you need to be part of the sudo account so that you can call the same command prefixed with sudo before that. So depending on which account you're using, you have to run it accordingly. If you're running it as a root, you can run it directly. But if you're running it as your own account, then you need to make sure your account is added to the sudo users list. So to run, now let's take, this is my machine name on which I'm going to install Ansible. Pretty much this is the same machine where I have used it for Docker. So I'm going to use the same machine for installing Ansible. So first, I'll try to run and make sure if everything is up to date. And then you will try to do a yum update so that based on all the libraries which is needed for the operating system, it'll be up to date. And once that is done, next, for Ansible, if you look, we need a set of dependencies. So when you are installing Ansible, as we saw yesterday in the concept, so Ansible depends on Python. So that way, now we have to make sure all the dependent modules for the Ansible and Python will be installed along with it. And we will also be using Git in case if you want to store all the code that we are writing as to be maintained in the Git. So that is how all these things are the name of the packages which we are going to install. And in that, finally, we will be installing Ansible along with it. So this is one command where I'm installing all the required packages. Okay. So pretty much I have already installed everything and it's up to date. In case in your machine, it'll ask you to press enter as and when needed. So if you click S, then it'll keep proceeding by installing one by one. Okay, so once you have installed all these things, the next thing what you have to verify is check whether Ansible is installed properly and it is working. So first thing you need to do is check where is the Ansible installed. So you can see it is installed in /bin Ansible, and to check whether it is installed properly, if you say Ansible version, it should give you the version that it is installed as the Python version that it has installed in this step. Okay, and in that you can see that it is using a default configuration file called as ansible.cfg from this directory, because as we saw yesterday, in case if you want to define a configuration file, you can specify it in this 4 paths and it will be checking up in the order. So if it is finding anywhere in this location, it will pick it up. If not, it will always pick up the default ansible.cfg from the etc ansible folder. Okay, so that's the first thing to make sure that we are installing Ansible correctly. And once you have installed Ansible, the next thing what we have to do is you edit the configuration file and add these 2 lines. So in this, if you edit this configuration file, Once again, when you have to edit, make sure you are editing as root or you are editing by giving a sudo command so that you will have privilege to modify this file. When you edit this, in this, search for a keyword called inventory. Okay, and here, the very first one. So in this, try to make sure you uncomment it so that we are trying to tell to the Ansible that this is the file which has all the inventory that is needed. Inventory means what are the different machines to which Ansible has to connect and do some configuration. So that details will be available in this file. So that is what we are going to do here. Okay. After this, the next thing that you have to enable is sudo underscore user equal to root. You can see it is there. Now try to enable it so that what happens now is when you're trying to specify a machine to which Ansible has to connect and do some task, it will be basically using this sudo account and then try to SSH to that machine and work. So that is how these are the two mandatory settings that we have to do. So make sure these two are enabled in your ansible.cfg file, whichever that you're using. Okay. So once you have done, pretty much we have completed the installation of Ansible. So that is done. But now the next thing is, now what is Ansible needed for? Suppose if I have a machine and on that machine, if I have to do a configuration, I will use Ansible to do the configuration automatically into that machine. So like that, if I have 10 machines, on all the 10 machines, I can use Ansible to connect through SSH and do all the configuration automatically. So that way, now, when Ansible is connecting to all the machines, the first thing is as what user you want to connect. Because now let's say, for example, let's say this is my server on which we have installed Ansible. Okay, let's consider this is where we have installed Ansible. And using this, I want to configure some machines that I have here. So let's say this is server 1. Okay, so the same way now I can have a couple of other servers. Okay, now let's say I have one more server. So server 1 and server 2. Suppose if we want Ansible to automatically connect to these two machines, and while connecting, how it is going to connect, as I saw the architecture yesterday, that it is going to use the SSH mode for connecting. So it is just like how we are going to connect through SSH to the machine. For example, like if I wanted to connect to this, I have used SSH to connect. The same way, if Ansible is trying to connect to the server, it is also going to use SSH. But when it is trying to connect, as what user or with what account it is going to log into this machine, because for SSH you need to have a username and password. Only through that it has to connect to these two machines, isn't it? So any machine that you want to connect using SSH, you have to specify a account name, that is the username and password. So that way now I cannot create a separate account for each machine, because if I have 100 machines, I cannot create separate 100 accounts. So what we will do is we will create a common account in all these machines so that when I try connecting Ansible to this machine, it will use the same common account on all the machines. Okay, so that is how. First thing what we will do is on each of the machine which has to be maintained by Ansible or configured automatically by Ansible, we will create a common account. Okay, so account is nothing but a user, a normal user. And since we are going to use it specifically for Ansible, so it will be using the same account to connect everything. Okay, so that way, now if Ansible wants to connect to this machine, let us create a common account in this machine and the same name in this also. Everywhere or whatever the machines that we are going to use to control under Ansible, we will try to create a common account. So to create a username, user is nothing but account, right? We will use the command called add user. Now, just to keep things in a simple way and to understand it easily, I'm going to create an account called Ansible itself. Okay, the name of the user is Ansible. Remember this, so that when Ansible is trying to connect to this machine, it will use the username called Ansible and it will try to do the SSH. Same way here also, it will use the username called Ansible and then it will connect. I'm just giving the name of the user as Ansible. So to create a new user, you will use a command called add user and Ansible. And once that is done, you will have to set a password. So this is what a system administrator will be doing. Okay, so to set a password for this user, you will say password and the name of the user, and it will be trying to set the user's password. Okay, so now on whatever machine that you want to connect. Now let's say I have one more machine, a practice machine, which is in Murga 2. Now I want to control this machine from Ansible. So if I run something, Ansible should be connecting to this machine and taking care of whatever the configuration is needed. Okay, so that way here, this server 1, you can take it as example like in Murga 2. Okay, so that is what we are going to do. First, in this, we will say user add. What happened? Disconnected. Okay, it's there. So let's say user add and create a account called Ansible. Okay, it's already existing. Suppose if not, okay, let's create a new account. Let me say Ansible 1. Okay, this is the name of the account that I'm creating. So after creating, you have to create a password for it. So you will say password and the user account. Okay, so it will ask what is the password that you want to set. So you can set some password. Okay, so you're going to set the password for all these things. Now, once you have set like this for each and every machine that you want to connect through Ansible and run some configuration, you will do the same thing on all the machines. Okay, and in fact, if you see now, we should be having the same account called Ansible on the host machine also. That is how you will be able to connect from this machine to this machine through SSH. So that way, on this machine also, we will be creating the same user. Okay. Okay, so now we have created the same user account called Ansible 1 on the machine where we have installed Ansible and on the machine to which Ansible has to connect and do the configuration. So first thing is we have created a common user account. The next thing is now when Ansible is going to connect to this, it will be connecting through this account called Ansible, or in our example, I gave it as Ansible 1. And using this, it is going to run all the commands that you want to do. Let's say if I say install some package, then Ansible will connect as this account called Ansible 1 into this and it will be running. But just now we saw that if you want to do any installation or management of the packages, you need to be the root account. If not, this account should have the sudo privileges. So what we will do is we will try to add this user account to the sudo list on this machine. So to add this account to this machine sudo list, we will be using a command called as vi sudo. So if you say vi sudo, it will open up file in which you have to give them details about what account you are trying to add and what are the permissions that you want to give in it. So basically you copy this line as it looks into this file so that the account that you have created will have sudo privileges. Okay, so after creating the account, we will try to say vi sudo, and you can see it will open a file like this. In this, what you can do is you can add a line where it will be adding up the account. So already I have an account. Suppose if I want to add this, I can simply add this also. So the name of the account that we created is Ansible 1. So I can give it up like this. Okay. The same thing on this machine also, where you have installed Ansible, you will be doing. So pretty much you say vi sudo, it will open up this file, and here there is a account that is added. So to this, I will add this. So by this, we are trying to add the account to the sudo users list. Okay, so now if you want to check, you can switch to this account and see whether the sudo is working. So now if I want to switch to this account from the root account, I'll say su and Ansible 1. In our case, I have created this account called Ansible 1, right? So I will say su-Ansible 1. Okay, so now you can see you have directly switched as the Ansible 1 account. And from this to test, let's say yum update. If I run the command, by default, it will not allow me because only root can run. But now, since this account has been added to the sudo list, I can say sudo and the same command so that it will run this command as the root privilege. Okay, so now you can see I can run it. So what this means is when Ansible is connecting to this machine using this account, it will run, and it can run everything as the sudo using this account so that you can install something or uninstall or maintain everything using this account. So that is how you will be adding the account to the sudo users. Okay, so what and all we have done, we have created a common account, and then we try to add that account to the sudo users so that that account has the privilege of installing or uninstalling or any administration that you want to do. Okay, now the next thing, if you look, when you try to connect from the machine where you have installed Ansible to another machine through SSH, always you have to give a username and password. Okay, now let's say from this machine, if I'm trying to do a SSH to this machine, then you have to tell as which user you are connecting, and then what is the password of this user in this machine, that also has to be told. But if you keep saying it like this, for each machine, you have to manually pass the password, because unless and until you don't give the password, Ansible will not connect. So you cannot automate any steps in that way, right? So for that, what we have to do is now, there is a concept called passwordless SSH. What do you mean by passwordless SSH? So now what is that we did? We created the same user account on all the machines as well as on the Ansible. So now you can create a password in any one of the machine, and you can share the same password to all the other machines, so that when Ansible tries to connect to that machine using this account, the password what you have here is the same thing here, because of which it will not ask you the password. So that way we can try to set up a password SSH. That is, you will create the password details here and copy the same thing to all the machines. So that is how you will not be asked when you try to connect through the SSH to any of the machines. Okay, so let's try to see that first. So this is the name of the machine. So now, if you look here, from this machine, if I do SSH, connect to this machine as Ansible 1, that is the account name, and @ means you will say what is the machine to you want to connect. So now from this machine, we are trying to connect to this machine using this account. So when you connect, you can see it is asking for the password for this account on this machine. So only if you give this password, you will be connected to that machine. Okay. Now, this will be a problem, as I said, because when you're trying to automate something, unless and until if you do not give a password, Ansible will not be connecting. So that is when we can create a passwordless SSH so that Ansible from this machine can connect to all the other machines without giving a password. So for that, now we will first generate something called as public and private keys. So for the SSH, there will be a public and private key which contains the password, not exactly the password, but the keys regarding that. If you copy those keys to all the other machines, then when you're trying to connect, since the key will be matching on both the machines, it will not ask us password. Okay, so that is what you have to do. Now, to do that, all you have to do is run this command called ssh keygen. Okay. Now, when you're running this, you have to run it as that user whose password has to be used. So in our case, I have used this account called Ansible1. So in this machine, change the user as Ansible1 and generate this key, and then take that key and copy this to the machines. That is what we are going to do. So now I'm back to my host machine. So now first let's switch to Ansible 1. Okay. And before this, here we will try to do the SSH keygen. Okay. And it is asking us where is that you want to store the private and public keys. So you can use the default location. Just press enter. It will take the default location, everything. After it has done, under the home directory of this account, if you look, you will be having a folder called .ssh. And inside that, if you go, you will be having these keys. So these keys will have the details about the password. So now, if you copy paste this key to whatever machine you want, then from this machine, if you are connecting to that machine using the same user account, it will not ask us password. Okay. So in this account, if you see now, there is no .ssh keys. Now either I can copy the .ssh folder from here to here, or once again for that also, we have a command called ssh copy id. And if you say this and give the name of the machine and for which account you want to copy the public and private keys, it will automatically copy. So from this machine, if I say copy the SSH ID of this account from the current machine to this machine. Okay. So since it is connecting again through the SSH for the first time, it will ask the password. But now, as soon as it gets copied, you can go, and now if you do the same thing, you can see you have got a SSH key, and inside that it would have copied certain files in a format that is needed. And now from this machine, if I try to connect to this machine using this account, it will not ask us the password. So if you go back and run the same command. So now from this machine, if I say SSH Ansible1 @ the machine name, you can see now it will not ask the password and it will directly connect. You can see we are connected to this machine. So that is how what we have to do is we have to generate the SSH keys and we have to copy it to all the machines that is needed. Okay. Then sometimes we don't just need Ansible to configure on the different machines, but on the same machine where you have installed Ansible, you might be interested to configure something automatically. So that case, you can use Ansible to configure its own machine also. Okay, so that way, what we have to do is we have to copy the SSH keys to the same machine. Okay, when you say local host, it will just keep a reference saying that whenever you say local host, it is going to point to the same machine. So that is the only thing. So that now using Ansible, we can connect to this machine and automatically configure everything, or tell the Ansible to configure everything on the same machine. So both can be done. So here, if you just say local host, it will try to copy the same thing within itself. Okay, so by this, what we have done, we have created a common account on all the machines to which Ansible has to connect, and we have added this account to the sudo users so that when Ansible connects to this machine using this account has all the privileges to install or uninstall anything. Okay, that is what we did. And then when you want to do a SSH, it should not be asking us any password. For that, we have created a passwordless SSH and we have connected to this machine. Okay, so that is the first thing that we have done in creating an environment, whatever is needed for our practice or in the production, one and the same. Clear so far on the steps? Okay, now what is that we have done? We have just set up the environment, but we haven't told Ansible that what is the exact machine on which it has to automatically connect, right? So we have just created the account. That's the only thing we have done. We have still not told to the Ansible that this is the machine that we want to pick up. So that way, now there is a file called as inventory file. In fact, in the configuration, if you remember, we added a file called etc ansible host, right? So this is the inventory file. Inventory file means the file which has all the list of machines which Ansible has to connect and do some configuration, whatever you have told to it. So that way, for every installation of Ansible, you will be getting an inventory file, which will be by default under etc Ansible hosts. Okay, so now inside this, if you tell all the name of the machines which you want to connect to, Ansible will connect to that machines only if you have specified here. So remember, any machine which you want Ansible to configure it automatically has to be defined under this hosts file. Okay, but it is not mandatory that you should always use this because this is the default file. If you want, you can use your own file for any temporary necessity or for testing purpose. That way, if you want to pass a different inventory file while you are invoking Ansible, you will say Ansible-I and specify the inventory file which is other than this. Okay. Now, how is that you will be giving an entry of a machine into this host? So if you open this file, etc ansible hosts, again, you need to be as root or run the command for sudo because the file etc ansible host will not be able to access as other users. So you can see this. In this, you will be having a format in terms of ini file. So if you're trying to use the machine, you have to specify the machines in terms of group. You will not be just telling a machine directly. So what you will do is, first, you will define the name of the group under which you want to add a file, because it's always a practice where in our production, we will be having many machines of the same purpose. So it is always better to group them. So what we can do is we will create a name of the group under the square bracket, and beneath this, whatever the name of the machine that the Ansible has to connect, you will specify it here. Okay, so that way Now you can either give the name of the machine or the IP address of the machine. Both are same. For example, if I want to create a group for our demo purpose, I can give the name of the group as demo in the square bracket and give whatever machines that you want beneath it. And I can create as many groups as I want, and under that, the same machine can be reflecting. So what you are saying is you are just creating a logical group under which what and all are the machines that you want to use. Okay, so that way now here you can see I have created one group called demo, and in that I have added a file, I have added a name of the machine. What is that name? This is the machine which I want the Ansible to connect and control. So that is what I have given. In the same way, I have created one more group called local, and in this I am adding the local host. So this is the same machine on which we are running. So like this, I have created two groups, and under each group I have given one machine. If needed, you can keep everything together as one. Depending on your need, you can create as many groups as you want, and you can add as many machines that you want inside it. Okay, so here for every machine that you want Ansible to be connecting and taking care of it, you have to define it inside this hosts file. Okay, now if you look, how does Ansible know which machine to pick up out of your hosts file or the inventory file? So basically, when you're invoking Ansible, you have to tell either a pattern of a host which is going to match inside the inventory file, or you will give the name of the group. So with respect to that, Ansible will be picking all the pattern or the machines which is matching. Okay, so for example, if you just give the name of the group to the Ansible, then all the machines under that group will be taken by the Ansible, and whatever the command or the instructions that you give to Ansible, it will be running on all the machines one by one. Remember this? So you can give more than one machine to the Ansible. Suppose under our demo group here, if I had 5 machines, then if I want to do some action through Ansible, let's say I want to install something. And when I say Ansible, use this group name called demo and install this, then Ansible will go to all the 5 machines one by one, which is available under the group, and it will be running the installation command or step, whatever that you have given. So that is how it is going to go one by one. Now, either you can give the pattern for the host is a particular machine name, then it will be executing the Ansible only on that. Or if you give a group name, it will be connecting to all the machines under that group. Or we can specify a combination of one or two groups is also possible. So depending on our use case, we can specify it. Okay. So let's say when you are having a group and you want to pick up only the first machine from it, then while you are giving the group name, you just say the group name and in the square bracket 0. 0 means the first machine. Same way, if you want to pick up only the second machine from the group, then you say in the square bracket 1. The same way, if you want to pick up the last machine in your group, then you say hyphen or -1. Okay. Now, if you want to pick a range of machines from your group, then you will say the range wherein the first machine or the first two machines will be picked up. So like this, you can say what and all are the machines that Ansible should be using for running some command, that you will say it in the pattern. Okay. So this is how you're going to give the details. So when you are invoking Ansible, now you can invoke in this way where you will say Ansible, the pattern of the machine that you want to use. That is where you can either give a single machine or the group name or a particular machine in the group. Okay. Now, to understand this, first let's try to run a simple command called all list. where if you say list host, it will be trying to show you what are the hosts or the machines that it is trying to pick up for some activity. So in that, suppose if I say Ansible and the name of the group, and I'll say list hosts. So now under this group, whatever the machine that it is considering, it will list them all. So you can see under this group, there is only one machine that we are using. The same thing, if I use another group called local, it will try to use this. Now, for some reason, if you want to use all the machines that is available under your inventory file, that is under all the groups, in our case, we had two groups. So if you want to use all the machines under your file directly, then you can specify all. So all means it will take all the machines. So you can see now it is considering these two machines. Like this, you can either give a specific machine or a group name, or you can simply say all. You can see now it is picking up only one machine, whatever you have given. So like this, when you run Ansible, based on the pattern that you are matching or passing, based on that, Ansible will be picking only that machines from the inventory file. Getting it? Clear so far on how you specify the inventory in the host file and how exactly you will be telling to Ansible on what machine to use and what is the pattern to use? Okay. So with this, now let us try to run Ansible and see how it is going to run. Now, when you are using Ansible, there might be scenarios where you might have to do something only for one time, or you might be doing it repetitively. So let's say now I want to connect to a machine and I have to just install something only once, or I just have to connect to the machine and fetch some information only once. I don't have to do something repetitively. So these kind of tasks which you have to do only once and it is not a big time consuming, then we will be using the ad hoc way of calling Ansible. So Ansible can be basically called in two ways. One is depending on whether you are trying to run an ad hoc command, there is one way that you will call. But if you are trying to call multiple commands or a complex step that you want to do, and you are interested to repeat the same thing again and again, then you will be using the actual scripting or the code, whatever that I was explaining in the architecture. So first, let's try to understand the functionality where if I have some simple requirement or a one-time requirement where I just want to connect to the machine and do some task, which could be a simple task, and I'm not interested to rerun it again and again. So for those kind of things, we will be calling it as a ad hoc command. Okay. Now, if you are going to run ad hoc commands in Ansible, only then we will be using a binary or a executable called as Ansible. Okay. So for the other one, we have another binary file which we will be calling. So if you are interested to run a simple command or a one-time command, we will be giving or calling this Ansible. Vinay, no. So only if a machine that you want Ansible to connect, only if it is available in the host, it will be picking up. So for example, here, if I say this machine, that machine is not at all available in the host, so it will not take. That's the reason I said any machine that Ansible wants to connect and know has to be given in this host file. If not, it will not be taking it. Okay. So coming back. Now, you will be using this Ansible binary or the command to run the ad hoc commands. So if you are calling this Ansible through ad hoc command way, then you will invoke Ansible, and first you will give the name of the machine or the pattern or the group, whatever that you have to call. And for that, you will be giving two options. First one is what is the module that you want to call and the arbitrary command before coming into the module. Now, let's try to run some command and see. Suppose if you want to run some command through Ansible, a operating system command, then you will be using this -a option. Okay, now let's try this first. So now if I say Ansible, and if I want to connect to this particular machine that I have given in the host, and for this, let's say connect to the machine under the group called demo, and in that I want to simply run a command, whatever that you want to run. Okay, so let's say run this command. Okay, now if you note, I am trying to run this as root, but what is that I said? So you have to use this account only to connect, because that is where we have set the passwordless SSH to connect to all of them, right? So let's use that account. So now if I run the same command here, what it is going to do? Ansible will now connect to this machine as this user using the passwordless SSH, and inside this machine it is trying to run this command. So this is equivalent to running this here. So whatever the output that you're going to get, you can see here it is the same output, correct? Now I'll show you the difference. So let's create a new file and see whether it is actually connecting. So under the temp, now I'll create a file, dummy. Okay, so you can see there are 4 files. So now you run the same thing. You can see you're getting the output. So this is how, when you run some command, Ansible is going to connect to this machine or whatever machine that you have given under this pattern. So here the pattern is a group name called demo, and under the demo we have given one machine. So it is trying to pick that machine, and in this machine it is trying to connect as this account, and in that it is trying to run the command. Okay, so after this, now any kind of command that you want to run, basically you can run it. So here if I want, let's say I'll create dummy2. Okay, now the same thing, if you see here, it would have created a new file. So like this, now you can pass any arbitrary command where Ansible will connect to that machine, whatever that you have given based on the pattern, and it will be running all of them. Okay, now suppose, let's say I want to run this command called yum update, for example. Now I cannot run it, correct? The same way, now here if I say Ansible -a yum update, what will happen? It will try to do the same thing, and here you can see it is failing. That is because when Ansible is trying to connect to this machine using this account, and in that, while it is trying to run this command, you can see it is not allowing us to do, because if you see the status of this command, it is not a 0, which means this command has actually failed. So that is why if Ansible is not able to run any command on the machine that you have specified, then it will be showing it in the red color. Okay, so now how is that you can run this? Now since this user has been added to the sudo, you can say sudo and then yum update. This is the way that you can run. But now in Ansible, instead of passing the sudo, which is again a problem, you can use an option called -s. So -s represents once you connect to this machine, whatever command that you're running, run it in a sudo mode. That is what you mean by -s. So you can see now it is trying to run it. Okay. So that is how, if you want to run anything in a sudo mode, then you have to pass a -s. Now, you can see here, whenever Ansible is running some task, if it is successful, then it will be giving it in green color. But what green color represents that is, it is successfully completed the command or task, but it has not actually modified anything on this machine, because you can see here the yum update is already been done. So that is why it is not doing anything. So green color means it is not doing anything actually, because everything is exactly as the state what you need it. Only if there is a change that it has actually done, then it will be showing it in yellow color. So yellow color means it has actually done some change. So let me delete a file from the temp. Okay, so here in the temp you have a file, right? So now you see what it will show. Okay, now basically it is going to give you the output on what it has connected. Okay, I'll show you the same thing using a module so that it'll be better. But for now, remember, when Ansible is connecting to a machine, and if it is failing that step, it will show it in red color. If it is successful and it has actually not done anything, then it will show in the green color. Whereas if it has actually modified the state of the machine, then it will be showing the output in yellow color. Okay. Now, we saw how is that we are going to invoke a arbitrary command, and how is that you are going to use a sudo to run it. Let's say now there are many commands, operating system commands that we have. Now, what Ansible does is, Ansible uses something called as module. A module is nothing but a equivalent of a command in operating system. So rather than we specifying the command, we can use a module so that Ansible can handle the command in a better way, and we also have a lot of options for that. So it's always better to use a module in Ansible, so that using that module, whatever the corresponding operating system task you wanted to do, we will be able to do it in a better way. So if you're using a module, then you will have to say -m and what is the name of the module that you want to use. Okay, so that is what we will have to do. So first thing is, let's check for a module called ping. Ping means you're going to check whether the machine is connectable, or whether from this machine you are able to reach that machine. That is what we call it as ping. So now if I say Ansible, and what is the name of the machine you want to connect in this, if I say ping, you will see it is going to say that it is able to connect to this machine and it is able to ping it, and it is getting the response. This is similar to giving the operating system called ping and giving the name of the machine. Okay, so this is how you're going to get the output. So for every command that you have in the operating system, equivalently there is a module available in the Ansible. Okay, so let's see a couple of the modules that we will be using on a day-to-day activity. First, if I want to copy a file from one machine to other machine, that is, if I want to copy a file from the Ansible server to a machine which we want to maintain through Ansible, then we can use a module called copy. So the command that you will be using is Ansible and the name of the machine or the group which you want to connect to, and in that, what is the module? Copy. So you'll say -m copy, and now for this copy, what and all are the options that you're going to have? You will pass it using this arbitrary command -a. So that way, for the copy module, it requires two values. One is the source and the other one is destination. So you will give those two under the -a option, so that when you run, Ansible will connect to whatever machine that you have given. In that, it will take this file from your current Ansible server and it will copy this file to whatever machines that you have given under this name. Okay, so let's try doing it. Now, this is the home directory of this account in this machine. So as of now, it is empty. Now what we will do is, let's create a file here called testing file. Okay, and I'll just put some content. All I have done is I've just created a file in my current directory. So now if I use Ansible, and what is the machine or the group that you want to connect, in that I'll say module copy -a, the source is this file, and the destination where you want to put. So if you want to put it under this directory, then I'll say this, and what is the file name that you want to do. So I can call it as copy testing file. And when you run, now if you can see, it has actually connected to this machine, and in this machine it is trying to execute this module and the task, and because of which it is copying the file. And under this, if you can see, there is a file available which we got it copied. Okay, now if you rerun the same command, now you can see the file is already existing. So Ansible doesn't have to do anything. So that is why it will be showing it in the green color. And it clearly says that it has not changed the state of the machine, because whatever the state that you have defined to the machine is exactly the same which is already there. What is the state? You have told to copy a file which is already available. So that is why Ansible is showing in a green color, which means it ran successfully, but it didn't do any changes on the machine. Getting it? Okay. Now let's look at another module. Suppose if you want to install something, then you will be using a module with respect to the operating system. Now we are using CentOS machine, right? This machine is a CentOS machine. So corresponding to this, the packaging manager that we will be using is yum. So when you are trying to install something, then you will use a module called yum. So if you say -yum and the module name itself is yum, then the arbitrary options for this should be what is the name of the package, so that you will specify using pkg. Okay, so the pkg, which is nothing but the name of the module that you want to, the name of the package that you want to install on that machine. And then the state represents what is that you have to do. Now, unlike a file, if you take a particular package, now you have to say whether you need the package to be installed on that machine, because you are trying to tell the state of the machine through this. So what is that you want to do through Ansible? Do you want Ansible to check whether a package is installed, or if it is not installed, do you want to install it, or do you want to update an existing package to the latest version, or do you want to remove the particular package from the machine? So what exactly is that you want to do? So with respect to that, each of that you will be giving a value in the state. Okay, so when you say state equal to present, what Ansible will do is it will check whether this package is available on that machine. If it is not available, it will install it. Present means it is going to make the state of the machine in which the package is present in the machine. So when you say package is present, it is possible only if you install. So that is how it is going to install. If you say the state is latest, then it means you need to make sure the package is always having the latest version on that machine. So that is how, in case if it is an older version, then automatically it will update the package, whatever that you have specified, to the latest version available. And absent. So absent means when you connect to that machine, Ansible has to make sure in that machine that particular package is not available. So that is how when you run Ansible on a machine, if the package is available, it will uninstall. Whereas if it is already uninstalled, that is what you wanted to maintain the state, right? So it doesn't do anything. So based on what state you want to do, accordingly, Ansible will be taking care of it. So now let us try to install a simple HTTPD package. HTTPD package means we will try to install Apache. So the name of Apache package in CentOS is what we call it as HTTPD. HTTPD is nothing but the name given for the Apache web servers package. So if I want to install Apache on a machine, all I have to do is run this. Okay, so now if you want to run the yum command, pretty much I said you need to have the root privilege, or we need to run it as a sudo privilege. So that is how all the installations or anything that you want to do have to be passed with -s. Okay, so now here in this machine, if I want to check whether the package is available or not, now let's say systemctl and status HTTPD. So you can say that there is nothing called as that and it is not running. So what we will do now, first we'll try to install the package. So I'll say Ansible demo -s because it has to run it as sudo, and the module is m, and the arbitrary command for that now is the package name, that is HTTPD, and then the state present, so that it will check. If it is not available, it will install it automatically. Okay, so actually it is already installed, so that's the reason. Suppose if I want to uninstall, then I'll say absent. So you can see now it has uninstalled. If you run it again, it has already uninstalled, so nothing has to be done. So that's why it says that there is no changes needed, and hence everything is fine. Now if you want to install, you just say state equal to present, and it will try to connect to that machine and install. And you run it again, it will not install because the state of the machine already has the Apache in it. So that's why you don't have to install it. Okay, so that's how if you want to install or uninstall something, you will be using a package or a module called as yum. Getting it? Same way. Now, let us look at another module called service. So in the last class or in the previous module for Docker, I was talking that for every installation or a package, you are just actually installing it. So if you want to run or start or stop, you need to create a service, and only with respect to that in a Linux machine, we will be able to handle. So that way, for the Apache that we have installed, we have just installed. So if you want to run it or start it, basically you have to invoke the service. So that is when, if you want to use Ansible, there is a module called service using which you can start a service or stop a service. So for that, the name of the module is service, and the options that you will give is what is the name of the service which you want to work. And in that, once again, the state represents what exactly it has to do. And as the name says here, if you give the state as started, then it will make sure that this particular package, whatever that you have given, that is the name of the service, is always started and running. Suppose if you want to restart it, then you can simply say restart. Or if you want to stop it, then you can say state equal to stopped. So based on that, accordingly, Ansible will be working. Okay. So now on this machine, we have installed Apache, but we have not yet running. That is what it is showing here. So now let's try to run it. So I'll say same thing. And again, I want to run it as sudo and service. And in the service, I'll say the name of the package is httpd. And what is the state? It is started. So now it will try to start. And because of this, you can see it is showing the output in yellow. Okay. And if you rerun it again, it is just going to give in green color because it has already started the service. And now you can see here, it is actually saying it is running, because earlier it was saying that it is not running or it is disabled. Same thing, if you want to stop, you can say stopped. And it will try to stop the service. And if you check this now, it is not running. Okay, so like this, you can start a service or stop a service using the module name called as service, for which you will give the name of the module or the service which you want to take care, and what is that exactly you want to do, that is start, stop, or restart, using the corresponding state. Getting it? Others? Okay. Fine. Now, let's use one more module called user. Suppose if I want to create a new user account, rather than running the command called user add, just like what we did, now using the Ansible's module called user, we can try to create an account. So if you just say module as user and the option where you will say name of the account, it will create this account in your machine or to that machine where you are trying to specify. So now let's say in this, let's check for a account name called Adam. As of now, it is not available. So let's use this. So I'll say Ansible, the group or the name of the machine. And since I'm running some administration command, I'll have to use sudo, and we'll use the command module called user. And in this, the name as Adam. Okay, so since it is not existing, it is creating a new account. That's why it is showing it as an yellow. Same thing if you rerun, it is already created, hence it is in green color. And now if you come here and grep, you can see it has created a new account called Adam in this machine. Okay, so the same way, if you want to uninstall, then simply say state equal to absent. So it will remove this. Getting it? If you rerun it again, it will show in green color because it has already removed the account. So this is how you will use the module called as user and you will run everything. Okay, whatever the user account that you want to create it. Okay, so it is just easy that all these things are one time. If you want to create an account, just use this module specifically. Now, same way, we have another module for creating a cron. So what is a cron? We saw in the Jenkins, right? So cron is nothing but the utility on a Linux machine where if you want to run some job or a task automatically, you will give the date and time on which it has to run and what is the job or command that it has to run automatically. Based on that time, it will be running. So suppose if you're trying to run some command automatically using the cron on a machine and you want to set the cron entry, then you can use this module where this will try to connect to that machine and create an entry in the cron. Okay. So to check now on this machine, if you try to check, there is no cron available for this, or if I go to the root and check, nothing will be available. So this is how you check whether there is a cron entry for this. Now, to run this, I can use a module called cron. So what I will say here, I'll say Ansible, and what is the name of the machine or the group. And since I want to do it as sudo because it needs privilege, and then the module that I'm going to use is cron. And for this, what are the values that you're going to pass? The first thing you're going to say, what is the name that you're giving for that cron for identification? Okay, so that I'll say -a and then the name. So name, you can just give any name that you want to give. Okay, and then other things that you have to give is what is the date and time on which you have to run. So if you can recall in Jenkins, to set a cron, we had given 5 values. Do you remember? Minute, hour, day of the month of the year, and day of the week. The same thing, you have to give all of them in here. Suppose if you do not give a value of a column out of this 5, then by default it will be taking it as star for that. Okay, so that's how. Now if I want to give, I can say what is the minute on which I want to run this. So I can say the minute as whatever. For example, let's say minute is 30 minutes. Same way, if you want to give the hour, you will give the hour, let's say I'll say 13. So this means I want to run a job exactly at 13th hour past 30th minute. And if I don't give anything after this, that means the remaining value, that is the day of the month of the year, and day of the week, will be considered as star. Okay. Then what is the job that you want to actually run? Because whatever the time you are setting, you want to run something, right? So what exactly is the job? So let's say I have some shell script or whatever that I have to call, then, or a Perl script or a Python. Simply you say what is the command or this job that you want to call here. Something like this. Okay. So now if you enter, it will try to set it up. And now if you go and check this, you can see here it will set it up. In this is the name of the cron that you have set, in which you have given the entry at 13th hour past 30th minute. You can see the default time for all of them is star, and this is the command that you want to run. So exactly every 13th hour past 30th minute, it will be running this automatically. So that is how you can set it up. Same thing, if you want to remove a count, then remove a cron entry, then simply say the name of the cron that you have set up and the state that's absent. So for the same thing, now if I say state equal to absent, so the Ansible's work is to make sure that this entry in the machine, whatever that you have used, is not available. Okay, getting it? So this is how, if you want to set up a cron, then you will use a module called cron. So like this, Ansible is all about modules. Okay, so these are only a couple of examples that we will be using day to day, but like this, for each and every activity, there will be a specific modules which is available, which we have to use based on our need. And for each one of them, you will be specifying a particular options through arbitrary option. So the module will be given by -m and the corresponding option will be given using -a. Getting it? So this is how we invoke Ansible to connect to any machine, and in that machine or machines, whatever the task it has to do, that is the state of the machine that it has to maintain, it will be doing it automatically. Getting it? Okay. Now, when you run Ansible, if you go back to the architecture when I was explaining Ansible, I said as soon as Ansible connects to the machine, it will gather the information, and with respect to that, what is that you have given? If it is not matching, then based on that, it will do everything. So that way, every time when Ansible connects to a machine, it will be trying to gather some information about that machine. Okay. So if you want to know that, that step is what we call it as idempotence or convergence. Because what Ansible will do is, as soon as it connects to the machine, it will gather all the information about that machine, and it will compare with what is the state that you have defined. And in case if there is a difference between what you already have in the machine which it has gathered and what you have told, then based on that, the machine will get updated or the state will be maintained accordingly. Okay. And if it's already in the same state, then it will not do anything. So that is what we call it as convergence. So for that, if you want to know what and all is the actual facts that it is trying to gather about the machine, then you can use a module called setup and you can display for that machine. So here, if I run Ansible and the group name and the module is setup, you can see it is trying to display all the values that it has been gathering about that machine that we have used. You can see it gives each and every information about that. What is the machine? What is the architecture? What are the other CPUs information, network information, right? Each and everything it is going to gather about that machine. And only based on that, it will be taking care of the convergence step. Okay, so that is how we can use setup. Now, instead of seeing all the output, if you want to filter and see only a specific output, then you can use a option for the setup module, that is filter. So if you say filter and you give a string, based on that string, it will be exactly showing you only that output. Suppose from this machine, I want to get only the IP address details. Then I will say filter equal to IPv4, where there can be anything before this or after this. Specifically, I'm trying to get it. So now if you run, instead of getting the whole bunch of output, it will be trying to give us only the output corresponding to that particular value that we are trying to filter. Okay, so this is how it is going to give you only those related to what you have given. So you can see it is not showing us everything, only that specifically. And further, instead of giving it in a generic way, if you specifically say this is the name of the value or the property from that machine what it is gathering, then if you give that, you can see it is specifically giving the details only of that. Here I actually ran the command called all. So all means in this Ansible setup, we have given two groups, and in that one group is demo. Under this machine is there, and there is another group called local in which local host is given. So that is why when you say all, it is trying to take both of them. So if I don't want this and I give only demo, it will connect only to that machine, and from that machine you can see, based on the facts that it has taken, it is trying to display only this, that the name of the domain for this machine is this one. Okay, so this is how you can try to get a particular property from that machine which the Ansible is trying to gather. So this is what happens when you're trying to run Ansible. Got it? Is that clear? Okay, so let me stop it for here today. And tomorrow, as I said, we will be using this Ansible command only if I have to do certain ad hoc things. The same thing if I have to do something repetitively, and if it is a complex thing, that is when we will be writing the code, which we call it as playbook. So the rest of the thing is all about different kind of playbooks that we are going to use. And in that playbook, what and all are the options? We have plenty of them. So we'll go through one by one in the next classes. Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll do that.